And your name is most commonly associated with drug reform. But what other issues have you been working on since you've been elected to Parliament, and what issues are you looking to address in the future?
Look, as an independent, I've sort of had to get my head around a lot of issues. Some I see in this place as strictly management issues that the government has a mandate to enforce and to legislate for, and I try not to be too interfering in that process. I'll scrutinise, but I try not to interfere too much with the government's mandate. What governments are mandated to do and ignore are the social justice issues. The whole issue of child protection and the government department that is mandated again to make sure that our children are safe, that families are supported, has let this community down terribly. And not only 40 years ago, as with the Mulligan inquiry and the Mulligan report, but the same things are happening here and now. And when nothing changes, nothing changes. So child protection has been an issue that has been very, very dear to my heart. Also family law. I know family law is a federal issue, but there are things that state governments could put into place that would stop people from actually having to go into the family law court. There are counselling services that could be set up. There are all sorts of intervention processes that we could use in this state to protect the people of this state from the family law court, and they need protection from that court. Either major party on the federal level aren't one bit interested in looking at family law and the reforms that are needed to make it work. For example, in the family law court, perjury isn't recognised, and the belief is people going into the family law court, the belief is he who lies most wins. How sad is that? That's part of our judiciary. That is an institution that can either make or break families and lives in this country, and our state government doesn't want to even look at preventative measures to protect the citizens of this state. Work cover is another one. The work cover legislation that we passed here last year, I think of the 2.5 years that I've been in here, that was my most shameful time.
You were ashamed. Why is that?
We have thousands of people on the work cover system that by this time next year will have no means of income. Many of those are unable to return to work. Many of those have received no rehabilitation at all, and many of those are going to find it very difficult to go onto the disability pension. What are they going to do? What are they going to live on? So many now have had to sell their homes and are living in caravans, are living in rental properties because they have to have just enough money to feed and clothe themselves. Now, don't get me wrong, people who are fit enough to go back to work should go back to work. But there was a campaign that was run some time ago about work cover cheats, and we actually know from statistics that less than 0.5% of the people on work cover cheat. So we have this entire legislative system set up now and corporate system set up to deal with cheats, as if everybody is a cheat. There are no return to work processes in place, and people on work cover who are seriously injured are left high and dry. So there was draconian legislation introduced into this parliament. Both major parties agreed to pass that legislation, and myself and Mark Parnell set up a bit of a filibuster to make sure that as much information as possible could be put on the public record that the major parties would have preferred not to be on the public record. And I notice now, even this week, the issue of work cover has come up again, where the government is now paying out massive redemptions to people, massive amounts of redemptions to people, so that by the 2010 election they can claim that their legislation worked. Well, it didn't work, and it's not working, and it's not going to work. And the fact of the matter is there are thousands of citizens of this state that have been thrown on the scrap heap because the government took the easy option.
And you said you're ashamed, but you were one of the very few people in this place that didn't support the bill.
That's right. Well, none of the crossbenchers supported the bill, but because both the major parties had agreed that this legislation would go through, obviously 6-7 votes isn't enough to stop it. But we did do everything within our power to raise public awareness of the issues. And I believe the media treated us quite unfairly in that process. It's our right as independents and as crossbenchers to make bad legislation as difficult as possible to get through. We were abused by the Treasurer. Kevin Foley stormed into our chamber and demanded that we pass that legislation, which we are the House of Review. And I believe myself and Mark Parnell were criticised quite a lot from the government about what we did in, both of us, I think, between us speaking for 15 hours, putting up our objections to the legislation. But that's what we're paid to do. And I'm proud of my part in that. And I just think that over time, both major parties, Labor and Liberal, the people of this state are going to realise that both those parties now have blood on their hands.
And the Ryan government has made no secret of the fact that it wants to abolish the upper house. How would that impact on the lives of everyday South Australians?
I think any government in power would like to not have a legislative council in place because, as I said, it is the House of Review. It's the House of checks and balances. The Legislative Council is what guarantees a democratic process. At the moment, we have both Labor and Liberal who sometimes join together to pass legislation, and of course it will go through in the upper house because of the lack of independence and crossbenchers up there. There's just simply not enough. The two-party preferred system in South Australia in the upper house has compromised how it operates to a point. But the fact is, we can still raise public awareness, we can still raise public debate, something that neither Labor nor Liberal would do if they didn't want a contentious issue out there and awareness about that issue out there, whereas the crossbenchers and independents make sure that we bring all of these issues to the attention of the South Australian public. Without a House of Review, without the Legislative Council, we would lose democracy. And I think people made that very clear at the last election, that they are well aware of the purpose that we serve. What they also need to be aware of is that, little bit by little bit, this government is putting things in place that compromise the effectiveness of the Legislative Council. I'm not sure if Mr Wren is still going to go ahead with that referendum or not, but bit by bit, processes are being put in place where the Legislative Council's effectiveness is being compromised, and I think that people should be aware of that.
An analysis of recent news polls revealed that both Labor and Liberal are declining in support in South Australia. Do you think that's indicative of widespread disillusionment with the major parties?
Look, governments will tell you that they don't take any notice of polls when we know they really do. I've made a number of speeches in the House about the fact that politicians are held in less esteem than Bindi Irwin. The Wiggles have more respect and are more trusted than politicians. And there's a reason for that. Politics over the last 30 years has disintegrated dramatically. We have political game playing now in place of problem solving, in place of effective governance. We have governments that are prepared to hand over the management of this state to the public servants, and ministers where no ministerial responsibility or accountability is to be seen. People are sick and tired. They are fed up with the game playing. They are fed up with crisis after crisis after crisis that threatens their well-being, threatens their security, threatens their ability to earn a wage, and threatens their ability to live well. They've had enough. And they hear political campaigns and see political campaigns on the television and on the radio that year after year after year, nothing changes. And I think they're making their disillusionment very, very clear in these polls to both parties. Pick up your game, solve the problems, govern the state, show leadership, and secure our future.